Now, this afternoon's ceremony is a small ceremony, but very important and symbolic one. And it is, I would not say, the culmination of several years of effort, because our hospital information system is an ongoing and evolving piece of equipment. And when operated to the best way possible, it is to the benefit of the patient, the efficiency in terms of the running of our institution-based systems, and by extension community-based when it is finally built out. But it is also a testimony to our ability to render care to patients in a fast and efficient manner, and in the process improve our footprint, reduce our footprint rather, in terms of our impact on the environment, in terms of moving more and more towards a paperless environment, but at the same time in terms of protecting patients' data and having a backup system in place, knowing, of course, that we live in a jurisdiction that is susceptible to hurricanes, where hard paper records are always open to the vagaries of the weather. Now, at the same time, while we are doing this, we are also mindful of the fact that any hospital's information system that is put in place could only be as good as the people who power the system, because we have invested, and we have invested heavily in this system. My information shows that the government of Taiwan would have invested to date almost $825,000 into this system, which is no small feat. Yes, we can clap for that. By extension, the government, through various forms, would have invested about $1.5 million into the project in terms of infrastructure, salaries, etc. And we are also grateful that in the process of providing employment via the hospital information system, we have been able to successfully make room for persons with disabilities to work under that environment. Now, the hospital information system benefits would have been outlined by the ambassador quite ably when he spoke before me. Suffice it to say that it is a system which is intended not only to protect patients' data, to have the data in real time, to allow doctors even off-site to view medical records of patients in time, but also allow us in the ministry to keep track of health information, because everybody knows that in a changing global environment, it is data that drives policy. Policy just doesn't happen. It is by the data that governs the policy, which means that the precursor to that means that that data that is entered has to be accurate from the first time. In the health system, we cannot afford to have much room for error, and if something starts badly, it will create a cumulative error in the system. So it calls for a lot of human accuracy, while making allowances for the fact that we are human and that errors may happen from time to time, but we will endeavor to keep them to a minimum. Over time, it is the government's wish, and by extension, the wish of our partners in Taiwan, that the hospital information system would get to the level of first world nations, where we would actually have that same data basically on a wristband for patients, so that everything that is done to or for that patient can be scanned immediately, so that you know in real time who would have treated that patient last, what they would have had done to them, what their basic temperature readings, blood pressure checks, everything would have been, even from a remote location, so that you reduce the likelihood of errors. And that is what we will ultimately be moving to. Now, I am grateful that thus far, in terms of our phase 2, we have approximately about 3,000 cards completed, Gail and Joanna, roughly. And these cards will continue to multiply as persons present themselves to the various facilities, because obviously there's no need to complete a card unless a patient is in front of you. And we hope that the less we have to fill out will be an indication of the health of the nation, that we won't need to have all 50-something thousand of our ultimate population to have a card. But be that as it may, the system will be designed to accommodate that. So we are very grateful for the inroads that we are making in terms of science and technology to augment the services that are offered by the public health infrastructure in St. Kitts and Nevis, both in terms of institution-based or hospital-based services, as well as the community-based or health center-based services. We also look forward to the full integration of all of our 11 health centers on St. Kitts, as well as the 3 hospitals here, the 1 in Nevis, and the additional 6 health centers in Nevis, so that we can truly have an integrated system. Of course, a lot of this calls for collaboration and teamwork with other ministries, chief among them being the IT department, and it is for this reason why we will have an ongoing conversation in the new year with A.G. Byron, who happens to be the minister responsible for technology, because a lot of what we are hoping to achieve rests firmly on the shoulders of that ministry and the ability to build out the government-wide area network, the G1 project, because without it, it cannot happen. By extension, we are also seeing the move for technology, not just in terms of our hospital and community-based health infrastructure, but also within the context of our national improvement programs that we are already in the middle of when it comes to human resource development and transformation in the public sector. Some of you may be aware already that there are 3 ministries that form part of a pilot project with the European Union. This project is envisioned to create a more efficient public sector using these 3 ministries as a pilot: health, education, as well as public infrastructure. And it is for that reason why the government would have invested in, over a year ago, the introduction of biometric clocks within all of our health facilities. They are not yet installed because of the wait on the G1 project, and it is intended to gauge not only attendance but punctuality and productivity, and would help us to make more accurate determinations in terms of payroll, since we are moving away from the increment-based system and more towards a system of meritocracy where people are being paid for the time that they actually spend at work. And it is meant to rule out fraud at the same time, because you cannot fake somebody else's signature in terms of their fingerprint, and that is what we will be using. The clocks are already here, but again, we need the infrastructure, the G1 infrastructure, to power that system so that the HR department of the government can accurately know what type of man hours, or to be politically correct, person hours, are being put into the system, and match that against performance and productivity and the pay systems that are in play at the government system, infrastructure throughout the whole government system. So we are grateful and we are positive that we are moving in the right direction. We wish to document our eternal gratitude to the government and people of Taiwan. Taiwan was the very first country with which this country, after independence, would have developed diplomatic relations. Truth be told, the diplomatic relations started even before independence. And then once our independence would have been secured in September of 1983, Taiwan became the very first country with which we have developed such positive bilateral relations. It is a relationship that has yielded considerable results and fruits for us, not limited to healthcare infrastructure, but also in terms of agriculture, information and communications technology, also in terms of training of our people along those lines. And as such, we are grateful, Ambassador, and we wish that you would convey our continued gratitude to your government and to your people. We trust that we will be good custodians of this hospital information system. By extension, we have already begun to take the necessary legislative steps in terms of data protection, because with the improvement in technology and the use of information and communications technology in particular, comes the susceptibility for fraud, for interception of persons' private details. So that is the very reason why the Attorney General's chambers would have taken such legislation to Parliament already, so that we could protect this type of private information, and hopefully to put it to good use when the time comes in terms of the socio-economic decision making that the government will continue to take on behalf of its people, not limited to the continued growth of the CBI program, because it was only a few months ago that the decision had been taken by the cabinet that foreign direct investment will no longer be purely defined for CBI purposes by just real estate. We have made a decision to conscientiously widen that scope to include health infrastructure, to include public infrastructure, to also include agriculture, and to include heritage. So it is a step in a very positive direction, and for that we are grateful, and we thank you on behalf of the government and people of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Stay up to date with news, programs, and activities of the government with SKNIS. Like us on Facebook. Listen to us on SoundCloud. Follow us on Twitter. And watch our videos on YouTube. Connect with us today. SKNIS, St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service.